Hola clase y bienvenidos. Hoy vamos a empezar Unidad 4. En Unidad 4 vamos a aprender más sobre el pasado. En el primer semestre aprendimos el pretérito. En este semestre vamos a comparar el pretérito con el imperfecto. Okay, so in English, what we're going to do today is learn the imperfect tense. The imperfect tense is a brand new tense for us, and in fact, we're going to first start by talking about this tense by comparing it to a tense we used a lot in semester 1, and that was the preterite. In Spanish, there are two past tenses, the preterite and the imperfect. As we talked about during first semester, the preterite deals with completed actions. Actions that are done and over with. Okay, you're very specific when you use the preterite. For example, you might say, I walked to school this morning, I saw a bird, and I arrived at 7:30. All actions had a definite beginning and end, and they were completed, done, and over with. The imperfect tense, which is going to be the brand new tense we're going to talk about today, is more descriptive. And in fact, there's really no mention of when the action began or ended. Okay, so it's very descriptive. You can use it to talk about how people used to be, how things used to be, people's age, time, weather, etc. There's a whole bunch of rules that we will talk about as we continue through this unit. One thing you'll notice about the imperfect is that it's very general. Okay, again, don't talk about when the action started or ended. So you might say something like, when my dad was young, he was really funny. I was purely describing my father, and I didn't tell you when that action began or ended. I was just generally talking about how my dad used to be. Here's some other usages of the imperfect tense. Okay, in our next video, we will go more into the depth of the uses between the preterite and the imperfect, but you can see here that everything is pretty general, pretty descriptive. Talk about something that was going on. Okay, so inging in the past tense. Talk about something you used to do on a regular basis. How old someone was, and then what time it was. And in fact, we'll group these last two into time, age, and weather. All three of those things will require you to use the imperfect tense when you're talking about them in the past. Okay, so when you go to use the imperfect in English, I've given them two meanings, as opposed to using the preterite where you would say I studied or I walked, okay, and it would be our equivalent to ed. In the imperfect tense, it's going to more look like I was inging. Okay, so I was talking, I was walking, etc. Or used to. I used to study, I used to talk on the phone. Those are the key words you will see when I really want you to use the imperfect. I will try to use those as much as possible in the beginning of this process to help you recognize when do I use imperfect, when do I use preterite. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more about formation. How do we form a verb in the imperfect tense? Two steps here. First step, you have your AR, ER, or IR, and you need to drop it. Okay, get down to the verb stem. Then you need to add the following endings. If you have an AR verb, you're going to add aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban. If you have an ER, IR ending, or verb, you're going to add ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. I like to call the imperfect tense the abas and the ias. Okay, and you can see here why. Let's look at a few verbs. Let's start with an AR verb. Here you see the verb jugar. To conjugate jugar in the imperfect tense, it would be jugaba, jugabas, jugaba, jugábamos, jugaban. To conjugate an ER verb, comer, again we drop our ending and you add ia. So you have comía, comías, comía, comíamos, comían. Okay, so most of my students find that conjugating the imperfect tense is relatively easy. You'll notice that the yo form And the he, she form are the same for both AR and ER, IR endings. Okay, so it would be common to include the subject pronoun yo, él, ella, etc. Do notice the accents on the ER, IR verbs. Okay, so that's your formation, your endings for regular verbs in the imperfect tense. There are, of course, some irregular verbs, and we're going to take a look at those. You will be excited to know that there are actually only 3 irregular verbs in the imperfect tense. So compared to the preterite, that's much better. Here are your irregulars. The first irregular verb is ser. To conjugate ser in the imperfect tense, you have era, eras, era, éramos, eran. To conjugate ver, which means to see, you have veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veían. You'll notice that ver is actually not overly irregular. The only thing that makes it irregular is that it holds its E. Okay, so typically when you have an ER, IR verb, you drop the ER and then add ia, ias, ia, etc. With ver, you hold the E and then add your normal ER, IR endings. Your last verb that is irregular in the perfect tense is ir. Its conjugation is iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, iban. Okay. Now let's do a little practice. Here in these 6 exercises, I have provided you with the verb. I would like you to conjugate all 6 of these in the imperfect tense. Notice that some are AR verbs, some are ER, some are IR. Also, I have included 2 of your 3 irregulars. Please pause me, use your notes, and complete these 6 practice exercises. Okay, lastly, let's check our answers. We have yo, hacía. En número 2 tenemos yo, era. En número 3, mis abuelos vivían. En número 4, mi hermanito lloraba. En 5, ellos siempre iban. Y en número 6, Eva hablaba. Okay, if you have any additional questions, you may see the notes provided on page 203 of your textbook. Also, if you do have questions, please write it down on your note guide. Bring those to class and we will talk about them. Okay, muchas gracias. Adiós.